Today we're going to be making some Gimmighouls. And of course I named these guys because when I make a bunch of fun characters with unique expressions, they need to have unique names. Gimmighouls are also one of my favorite Pokémon, mostly because they remind me of my Tasty 8 cookie dudes. To get started on our Gimmighoul template, I bring out 2 pieces of cardboard that are the same thickness. In this case, these are cardboard pieces that came with my postal stamps. I roll out this piece of cosplay into a thin sheet, place it on my baking plank, and since I'm not going to use this entire sheet, I trim off the excess before baking. Here, I drew my Gimmighoul template in pencil, as well as a little rectangle template for some tiny Game Boys that I immediately forgot about only seconds later. I'm also using the circle cutter to make my Gimmighoul coin template. And I was hoping that wouldn't get stuck in there, but that's okay. I can just bake it like that. I use the other side of the same circle cutter to try again. And the circle of clay stays this time. After baking, I pop out my first coin template, observe the air bubbles that my Gimmighoul outline narrowly avoided, and I pop out my second coin template. Then I begin the process of roughly trimming my first Gimmighoul template with my Olfa knife. While I do that, let's talk about Gimmighoul lore. This particular type of Gimmighoul I'm making is called a roaming Gimmighoul, because they aren't found inside of a treasure chest like this guy. But instead, they can be spotted in different hiding places, like signs, rocks, and bridges, as well as ancient ruins. These guys are extremely timid, running away and dropping their coin as soon as anyone approaches. Roaming Gimmighouls constantly wander and are believed to be searching for the chest they used to live in. And, best of all, they drain the life force of humans who try to steal their coins. So don't do that, okay? To clean up the rough edges of my trimming, I sand my little blue guy with a little sanding stick. I also thin him out further with some sanding on his front and back sides. I apply some liquid clay onto his face to start giving him some cranial depth, so he doesn't end up as flat as a gingerbread man. While he bakes, I get started on my coin template. I want to make a ring out of this piece of clay and then add a thinner layer of clay in the middle so that it can look more like this. So I'm going to use my circle cutter for that. And we have a clay ring. We also have a warped circle cutter, which I'll definitely remember next time I try to use it for circle cutting. Then I take a little bit of Sculpey clay, push it into the ring, and remove some of the excess before baking. After a quick bake, I clean it up a bit more with an X-Acto knife and sanding block. After waiting 20 minutes for my amazing mold putty to set, I pop my blue guy out of it and add my gray Sculpey blob in. Then, once I have a gray guy, I pop him out too. Next, I clean him up a bit with an X-Acto knife and stretch him to be a little taller before baking. I also use my coin mold to make a coin to bake together with my Sculpey man. The reason I chose Sculpey clay rather than cos clay for this is that it's significantly easier to sand and shape, so I'll actually be using him as the template for my final Gimmighoul mold. All of my future actual Gimmighouls will be made with cos clay, which is more flexible after baking, so I don't have to worry about easily breaking them. After I finish sanding this guy, I make my final Gimmighoul mold from him, and start making some cos clay Gimmighouls from that. After making Sona here from my second mold, it's time to give her a cute little pose. Sona is going to have her arms out because I want her to potentially be holding something during our final photo shoot. Oh my goodness, she's so adorable already. And since her head is still super flat, I add some more depth to it by attaching a dot of cos clay to the face region. Smooth it out, and bake Sona for a few minutes. To get my Gimme Dude's antennas started, I roll out some thin noodles of black cos clay. Cos clay's stickiness makes it a bit unruly to roll out like this, but it also results in flexible antennas after baking, which other non-sticky polymer clays would not. Now let's silently watch as I struggle. Luckily though, I don't have to make any more of these. After my expert antenna handling, it's time to get a few more Gimmighouls posed. Keen here is gonna get some happy outward arms. And Alton is just gonna have his arms really close to his sides. Look at my cute Gimmighoul card! I'm not gonna lie, I buy these with the excuse that they'll be reference images for clay builds, but I have hundreds of Pokemon cards, and I've only made like 15 different Pokemon ever. But anyways, it's time to trim my antenna noodles to their actual antenna lengths. For the first time ever, I'm gonna use the measurement grid on my cutting board for this. After carefully trimming over 24 antenna pieces to size, it's time to start gluing them together. This first pair of antennas took me almost 10 minutes to glue together. I start by lining them up perfectly before gluing them to make this as efficient as possible. And then I get started actually gluing them together. Here, I'm trying to change the angle of this antenna a bit, but it just looks like I'm rolling it back and forth for no reason at all. I then trim 2 teensy coins from a small noodle of baked black clay and glue those to the end of each antenna. After baking a few pairs of antennas, I inspect them to see what translucent glue spots I need to trim off, and proceed to carefully trim them. And then for some reason, I struggle for a minute to figure out which antennas go together. I think they all look pretty much the same though. And just like I did with the front of my Gimmighoul faces, I add another dot of cosclay to the back of Golt's head here, to give him some proper cranial depth. This also makes it much easier to tuck the antennas into his head, without me having to drill holes into it, which is what I did for the first Gimmighouls I made last year, and some of their antennas actually fell out because they weren't secured properly. I also add 2 little dots of glue to the backs of the antennas to help secure them even more after baking. Now it's time to give Golt some adorable little beady eyes. And Zoe gets her eyes placed a little higher up and a little closer together. Luckily though, this doesn't matter as much as I initially thought it did because their golden eye dots make the eyes look so much better. Next, Golt gets some little lines between his eyes, which I apply with black liquid Sculpey clay. And for Zoe, I try painting on her eye lines with actual paint to see if I prefer it better. And I decide either way actually works just fine. I apply Golt's little black belts with some liquid clay, and Zoe gets her belts applied with some actual paint. And I like the paint much better for this particular step. Since Golt was one of the Gimmighouls lucky enough to have found his first golden coin, I go ahead and attach the coin to his back with some clay glue and a bit of raw cosclay. After baking his coin on, it's time to attach Golt's little antenna tail. With Zoe and Golt finally reunited, it's time to give them some cute little mouths. Golt is going to be giving a surprised expression because he's surprised at how adorable and thoughtful his Christmas present from Chris was. And Zoe is going to be like, yippee, because she finally found a golden coin, and she just can't contain her excitement because she's been searching for so long. Before we get started on all of our gold detailing, let's enjoy a banana chocolate chip muffin and some hot chocolate. Now here's where my gimme guys really come to life. Look at those beautiful eyes. Whoa, let's see that again. I didn't know Golt was an aspiring breakdancer. After a short dance break, Golt gets some golden dots applied to his antennas. And I finish off his gold detailing by painting his back coin. This took about 5 layers of gold paint to fully cover the gray clay. Oh, and I almost forgot to add the gold details on the back sides of their antennas. To clean up the antennas a bit and cover up any translucent portions, I apply some black paint to them. And since some of my Gimmighouls haven't found their coins yet, I made some loose coins for them to find during our photo shoot. Their eyes and antennas get tiny dots of Sculpey gloss to make them pop even more. And while we wait for Gold's gloss to dry, I'm gonna varnish Keen because his glossy spots have already dried. He was worried about being varnished, so my daughter said I should give him this cookie. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? Since this photo shoot will be Christmas themed, I'm gonna make some little gift boxes for my gimme dudes to find during their Christmas scavenger hunt. I roll out a piece of Sculpey clay, flatten it into a rectangular prism, and trim it into 5 gift boxes. My boxes get some festive paint applied to them, as well as some ribbon lines. Since Chris here is going to be holding a Christmas gift, I figured I'd give her and at least one other Gimmighoul a Christmas hat. So I start by making some white pom-poms of various sizes to see which ones would fit best on their hats. For my red hat, I shape a tiny bit of red cosclay into a flat triangle, and then fit it to Chris's head to make sure I can easily attach and remove it as needed after baking. Our final step is attaching the red hats to their white pom-poms using a bit of clay glue. With our festive little hats done, it's time for our photo shoot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.